Hello everyone, welcome back to Alex's Animal Channel. Today I thought I'd show you my newest animal I've just got. It's a pair of giant African land snails. Now, these two have recently been given to me from a pet shop that couldn't sell them. Quite keen friends with the owner, and he passed them on to me because he couldn't get rid of them. I have kept them before for many years, not long ago now, as some of my friends who watch the channel might know, and I used to keep them when I was very young as well. These two are approximately about a year old. Obviously, giant African land snails, if you didn't know, are hermaphrodites, meaning that they have both male and female parts, meaning that they don't really have a gender, so it struggles to give them names. So currently they don't have names. I've had them for about 6 months now. I still need to give them some names. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of a rundown on how to keep them and how to care for them properly, because they are quite an easy pet if kept properly, and you know, very cheap how to look after, and you don't need anything special to look after them really. So this is a 2 foot long by 1 foot tall by 1 foot wide, so that's 60 centimeters by 30 by 30 centimeters back fish tank. You can pick these fish tanks up for I picked this one up for £10 off Facebook Marketplace quite not long ago. They were originally in like a rub setup, so like a really useful box, which is, in my opinion, not very nice. I've used them in the past and I don't like them anymore. You know, you want the animals on show. I admit that I used to use them and I hate them now, so you know. So I thought I'd talk to them how to look after them properly. So the first is the enclosure. So the enclosure, obviously, you can have any, you know, secure tank, fish tank, maybe, you know, underbed storage box if you really want to. The only thing you need is a good deep layer of substrate. So at the front here, I have about 2 inches worth of substrate, about 6 centimeters. At the back, I have roughly about 4 inches, so double at the back than it is at the front. That's just purely for aesthetics, so it looks like it's a rolling landscape. That's something I prefer to do. But you need that good, you know, 4 inch maybe plus of cocoa coir. Oh, this is cocoa coir, so it's stuff you get from the pet shop. You can get it from Amazon quite cheaply. But this is brilliant for them laying their eggs, and we'll talk about egg laying and reproduction later. So another thing about the enclosure is that they do require extra heat. So they require probably just above room temperature, possibly 25 degrees up towards your 27, your 30. I don't have a heat mat on these two currently. That's due to the fact that my room that I keep all my reptiles in is around that temperature. So ambient heat is better than, you know, like a heat mat, because obviously they're not always going to be on the heat mat. If we was going to have a heat mat, I'd recommend you either put it on the side, not on the bottom, because it'll dry out the soil very quickly. And obviously being a tropical species, you want to have quite wet soil. And being snails as well, obviously you want quite wet soil. So another thing is humidity, as I've just mentioned. So you do want it quite humid. So what I do every day is I mist down the enclosure, make sure the soil's still wet, maybe give them a little bit of a spray sometime. Definitely I always spray their food, of course, as well, because that helps, as being snails, the water helps them absorb their food. So yeah, so that's all I do every day. In the enclosure, I don't have any special light on them really. It's just a simple LED 12-volt light that just, you know, is just resting on the top of the plexiglass up here. So there's no special lid on the enclosure. Ventilation is really key. So you can see these 2 panels of plexiglass don't actually reach the sides. That's just to allow for a bit of airflow, because the air does get stagnant very quickly, and for any invertebrate that's not healthy. You can develop stuff like you know, chytrid fungus, especially in amphibians, but you know, in invertebrates, stuff like mold and salmonella can build up quite quickly in these enclosures. So ventilation is key. Even if you just open if it is a tight fitting lid, drill some holes in it or open it once a day, waft some fresh air in. Especially if you've got a heat mat on there as well, it'll go very stagnant very quickly. So, onto the animals themselves. So, you might have read up about them if you're watching this video already. They are hermaphrodites, obviously, so they breed with each other. So this one will reproduce with this one, and this one will reproduce with this one. That means that they were both eggs at probably the same time. It's happened a lot in the past when I've kept multiples together. With their egg laying, you have to be really careful with how you dispose of their eggs. If you want to hatch them, keep them in the enclosure. That's probably the best bet, because the snails know where the optimal place is to lay them and if they're going to hatch or not. If you don't want to hatch them, which is recommended because obviously you'll end up with hundreds of them, it sounds horrible, but you can either freeze the eggs or you can boil them in boiling hot water. I prefer to freeze them. I don't freeze them at all now. I don't boil them at all. I feed them to my other animals. So these two don't lay many eggs, thankfully, but when they do hatch, my animals, such as my turtles and my bearded dragon, really likes eating the young ones of these. So that's always a bit of free live food, and it obviously is perfectly like for the turtles, they'd eat snails in the wild, so would the bearded dragon. Obviously not these. The turtles are from America, the bearded dragons from Australia, these are from Africa, so they wouldn't really meat in the wild, but you know, it's a live food source. So onto their feed and water. So I give my snails a bit of cucumber, not much because they seem to go quite crazy on that, and quite a lot of greens, so cabbage, kale, pepper. That's not a green, but you know, pepper, pear, apple. They like any fruit. They do prefer it a bit more rotten, so if you like it a bit more riper than usual, they'll eat it a lot easier, because obviously they don't have a set teeth, you know, they have like a rasping jaw, kinda, but no teeth to chew on it. So the cucumber, that's what I mean, they'll go mad for, because it's quite squishy anyway. Obviously, any animal with like a calciferous shell, so snails, particularly you want to offer them always a cuttlefish bone. So a cuttlefish bone is the spinal bone from a cuttlefish. Currently there's not one in this enclosure because I've just cleaned them out and it was done for. So it will look like an empty one eventually, and that's when they finished it. I haven't put another one in just yet, but I'll try and get one for the end of the video, but I'm not sure if I've got any left. I'll definitely put one in the next few days. So if you're thinking of getting these for your children, they're brilliant pets. You know, they're just they're lovely to handle. They'll just crawl up and down your hands. The only thing to worry about obviously is that they are very, very fragile. I remember when I got these as a young boy, my mum and my dad practiced me with, you know, snails out the garden. You know, look after them for a week and be careful with them. They are fragile. If you drop them, they'll smash. You know, they will die with that as well. You can't. There's no. Well, there might be, but there's no snail vet who willing to save. You know, create a new shell for them. A lot of the time, if they are injured, they will just suffer. However, other than that, if you watch your children around them, they are really good pets. Another thing is that they're they're really not resilient, the opposite of resilient, so quite susceptible to anything that's on your hands if you are handling them. So say if you just ate your food and you've put salt all over your food and you've got salt on your hands, as soon as they come onto your hands, they'll start absorbing whatever's on your hands. If you've washed your hands, just gone to the toilet, they'll absorb it. So anything that's on your hands, you've got to be really careful that they don't absorb anything. Particular thing I like to do is just swirl your hands with some hot water, no soap, just hot water under the tap for like half a minute, maybe up to a minute. If you even better, put some gloves on. If you've got any latex gloves or rubber gloves, set some aside for just handling these. Wet them before you put them on. Get your spray bottle, spray your glove, and you can handle them, no problem. Obviously any makeup, perfume, stuff like that, it will hurt them, so you got to be careful on that. But yeah, they're very simple pets to look after. Otherwise, they don't do much. Of course, they just sit here, but they are freaking cool, aren't they? Really cool. So these two are roughly about, so from the tip of her shell or his shell to the top of the shell, that's roughly about 4.5 inches. Now when they're fully out, we obviously won't be out now, she's just coming out at the back. I always call them she just because I don't know, I do. But she's coming out now. From the tip of her foot, so a snail foot is the big thing she walks on, obviously what she's got out of the shell now, probably about 6 inches long if you include that as well, which is quite amazing. Sometimes it can get up to 10 inches, 12 inches big. Mainly the wild caught ones, which you don't really want to get. You should always stay away from any pets that are wild caught. These guys are easy enough to breed, so always buy captive bred. If you're going to go to the pet shop, make sure you ask them, are the snails captive bred? Because the wild ones come with a lot of problems, such as mites or fungus infections, which isn't worth bringing home because you'll just be distraught when they do pass away. Another thing is they do live, upwards of, I think when I was younger I had maybe one for about 5 years. So they do live quite a while, and in that time they can lay millions and millions of eggs. So if you're not prepared to keep an eye on them and to check the substrate, because they will bury them under there, just check them once a week, if not once every couple of weeks. A few times a week, sorry. Because it's always worth checking, because one day you'll come to millions of baby snails running around. But yeah, oh, there you go, she's coming out for the camera. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions of how to keep these guys, there's plenty of articles here on YouTube, especially regarding giant African land snails and children, because obviously a lot of time they're in schools. Another thing that parents are worried about is, can these animals carry anything, to my children? Of course they can. Any animal can carry diseases. These two have probably got all sorts of problems, not problems but diseases in their body they're naturally fighting off, just like us. My suggestion is, when I let the kids handle these two, wash your hands afterwards. Wash your hands before, like I mentioned before, put some gloves on if you really want to, and wash your hands afterwards. Don't touch your mouth before you wash your hands. Don't eat. That's the best thing to do. Don't lick them, obviously, don't put them on your face. But yeah, other than that, they're as healthy as you keep them. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, comment below. I'm happy to answer. Bye bye.